Narrow our focus a bit. My next guest, Deborah Ann Davis, is here to talk to parents of teenage or soon-to-be teenage daughters, and she's on a mission to help countless teenage girls who repeatedly make bad dating choices. Also to encourage young, inexperienced teens to avoid making that first bad choice. And you parents of teenage sons, please don't tune us out. You may be able to help your son become one of the good guys that enlightened teenage girls will be seeking out. And Deborah Ann Davis also is here to dispel some common myths about teenage dating and sexual interaction. For about 20 years, she has surveyed high school students on the topics of sex, drugs, and alcohol. And like me, you may be surprised to learn that teen promiscuity is a lot less common than most people think, including the teens themselves. And Deborah Ann Davis is a 27-year educator, but as she puts it, although somewhere in the middle of educating, I stopped out for 6 years to do the mommy thing and run the office of our family construction company. As a high school biology teacher, she seeks to debunk so many sex myths believed by inexperienced teens, and she's presently an educational speaker and author of an award-winning series of young adult fiction, Fairly Certain, Fairly Safe, and the upcoming Fairly Obvious. And this fall she'll release her nonfiction workbook, A Girl's Guide to Good Guys, The Power of Being Picky and Patient. Great title, and that's what we'll talk about today. And hello, Deborah, and welcome to Middle Age Can Be Your Best Age.
Hi there. Glad to be here.
Well, back when I was in high school, and I'm certain it's true today, I believed that everyone else in our class was sexually active except me. But, of course, I never would admit that I was not. You have surveyed high school students on their sexual experience for over 20 years. Is it, in fact, true that almost everybody in their teenage years is having sex?
No, it's not true at all. When I surveyed them, I did it under the guise of data collection and analysis in a science class. Yeah. So I could get away with asking them just brief questions like were they or weren't they. Yeah. For the freshmen, it turned out that 2 to 5% of them were actually dabbling with sex.
Oh, wow.
But 90% of them believed that everybody was. So I would give them results of the survey, and then they'd say, no, there's no way. Everybody lied. And I'd say, no, this is, a bubble sheet. You fill it in. I mean, who here lied? They'd say, well, I didn't lie. Yeah. I said, okay, well, we'll do the survey again. So I'd give them the survey, and then the next day I'd give them the results, which would be the same. And even though they got the same results 2 days in a row, they still would not believe it.
Even
that's the part that always floored me.
Yeah, you even found that juniors and seniors weren't all that sexually active, I guess, according to your surveys.
No, it's like pretty close to 10%.
Wow.
And most people think it's closer to 90%. But the interesting thing about the older kids is 100% of them believed everybody else was having sex.
Well, the actual incredibly low incidence of teen sex is good news, but the typical teen's mistaken belief that everyone else is doing it may be bad news. Is full-blown adolescent insecurity pitted against that magical sexual propaganda likely to tempt our teenagers to throw caution to the wind? I would think it would.
Absolutely. The movies, everything mixes up the difference between romance and sex. And then you've got the teenage brain that is influencing them, which is a scary place to go in the first place.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how does a female teenager's brain make it so difficult for her to date wisely? What's going on in there?
Well, it's actually for teenage girls and boys. When I was raising my daughter, who is now 26, and in law school and kicking butt and taking names, so that worked out well. But when she was being raised, the data was that the brain was formed around 3 years old and just grew. And now they understand that the brain forms from the back to the front. And guess what the front part of the brain is responsible for? Logic and reasoning.
Yeah.
So they were doing MRI studies on teenagers, and they would show a girl or a boy a picture of their boyfriend or girlfriend, and they could see that 4 separate areas of the brain were triggered, but not the logic and reasoning area.
Oh, great. Well, with more free
that's
time...
one of the reasons.
Yeah. With more free time, no school supervision, and outdoor necking parties, the risk is especially great in the summer months. What kind of preparation can and should we parents make early this summer to keep our teenage daughters safe? Or is there anything we can do to...
The biggest tool parents have in their arsenal is conversation.
Yeah.
If you talk to your kids about it, I mean, for some people, you've got graduation parties coming up. So everything I'm saying applies to those parties.
Yeah,
basically, you have a plan. You discuss the plan with your teenager. You say that you're, like, for a graduation party or summer party, that they need to check in with you every hour.
Good.
And then you outline the consequences if they don't follow your rules. And then, of course, the most important thing is you have to enforce those consequences if they break the rules. It's the only way to keep them safe.
Yeah. Well, here's the million-dollar question. How in the world can we parents get our teenage daughters to listen to our advice? And what are some resources we as parents can use to talk to our teens? I know that discipline, the consequences you talk about is part of it, but how can we make them want to listen, in effect?
Well, my approach has always been to go the humorous way. So if you are that kind of a parent, go to my website, and there's a quiz on there called Sex Myths Believed by Inexperienced Teens. So that will give them something to giggle about and open up the conversation.
Yeah, I was just noticing that. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there's also a couple of books out there. I recommend a book called Dial Down the Drama by Colleen O'Grady.
Oh, I see.
And another one called Growing Courageous Girls by Priscilla Wainwright.
Yeah, I think we've had Colleen on this program before, actually. I recognize that name. But
her stuff is very, very good. Basically, it says, as parents, we're in the Middle Ages here. We have anxiety about talking to our teenagers, and that ramps up and heightens our reactions to what they say and do.
Yeah, we're so sensitive ourselves that, and then
it hurts our feelings.
Then it becomes a game of protect your own rear, and don't take it from your teenager. And when two people get defensive, obviously they can't have a good conversation. But
exactly. And if you're having a fight with your child, there can only be 2 outcomes. Either the child wins, which you don't want that, or you win, and then you end up with a beat-down child, and you don't want that.
No, you don't want either of those.
The point is to talk, to have conversations, even if they're not something where you're trying to create a rule or a disciplinary action.
Yeah.
A conversation you can have is, what if your 30-year-old self were to walk into the room right now? Would they high-five you and say thank you for the decisions you made? Or would they say, hey, why did you let us get that STD? Or, hey, why did you let us get pregnant? I mean, those are conversations you can have. And if you don't feel comfortable having them about, me and you as mommy and daughter, say, do you think your best friend's 30-year-old self would say to her? And put it all in the frame reference of the best friend. Or somebody in their school that the child said, did you hear what so-and-so does? When the child comes home with a story about something going on in the school, you don't have to direct it specifically to the child, but throwing in that, what would their 30-year-old self say?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Well, what are some of you mentioned that quiz, what are a couple of those myths that we can relay to our daughters that from that quiz? Just, you don't have to give us all of them, but I love those, like a girl can't get pregnant if she keeps her panties on was one of them.
Yeah, no, that is definitely possible that they can get pregnant if they're fooling around and they're wearing their panties. And it's not typical, of course, but as long as there is a stream of moisture, sperm can swim. And they have a goal.
I like that. You can't get an STD or a sexually transmitted disease if you have sex just one time.
Oh, my Lord. I've had kids who told me they got pregnant because they borrowed one of the, pills from their girlfriend. They thought that, well, it prevents pregnancy, so I'll just take a pill. They are so confused about what's going on because the reality is they don't listen when we're having the talk because they're embarrassed, right?
Yeah,
but the reality is that out of the girls who have had sex, 80% of them regret it.
Oh, wow.
80% of them regret it. They wish they had waited.
Certainly worthwhile pointing out to your daughter then, I guess.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, if you have a girl who has had sex, then you have to calmly say to them, we have to go to the clinic.
Yeah.
My daughter called me up to tell me she had sex the first time when she was in college.
Yeah.
She called me up and said, Mom, don't freak out. I have something to tell you. So that don't freak out was able to calm me down because I knew what was coming. She says, I had sex.
Yeah.
I said,
at least you had that trust between your daughter and you that it's wonderful that she would tell you that. But
she says, I had sex. And I said, then did you go to the clinic? And she starts yelling, I knew you'd freak out. I just knew you'd freak out. I knew it. And I'm sitting there going, did you go to the clinic?
Yeah.
Because the first thing you need to do if your child has sex is you need to get them to the clinic. Yeah. And you need to teach them that if you have sex, there are consequences to it.
Yeah, that's
because
for sure.
1 in 4 teenagers who have sex get STDs.
Yeah. And
for girls,
when they
it's
think
not
about
detectable.
The possible consequences of just a few moments of pleasure of what they can go through with an STD or pregnancy, an unwanted pregnancy, is just overwhelming. That's that they would think about that, and certainly those are good arguments that should be used to convince them that it's not that smart to have sex when you're a teenager. But let's talk a bit about your forthcoming book, A Girl's Guide to Good Guys. Give us a story behind the book. What motivated you to write it?
Well, I was in my classroom after school one day, and my door slams, and these 2 girls in tears come rushing up to me. And apparently they were being stalked by one of their boyfriends who was abusive.
Yeah.
And it was an ex-boyfriend, and he was mad. And so they wanted to know if they could use my room for their locker, because that's where he was catching them.
Yeah.
So I told them they could if they kept the drama away from my classroom and if they came to see me once a week, because one of the girls had had a boyfriend since the 7th grade and was going through this over and over and over.
Oh.
So this was not a new experience for them.
Yeah.
And I wanted to discuss with them the choices that they were making. But I had to make these into little challenges that would tweak their interest and not make them defensive.
Yeah.
So I ran into the girls about 5 years later, and one of them had laminated this little cheat sheet we had made of must-haves. The guys had to have these characteristics if they were going to be serious about them. And these were their own personal things that they were able to flesh out because they weren't paying attention to the media and other kids and influences of their generation.
Well,
and then
is your
she
book
showed me
intended to be read by teenage girls, by parents, or by both? Who's your book?
It is a workbook. It's a set of challenges and exercises that the girls fill out, and it'd be very easy for parents to go through it with them.
I see.
I would suggest parents answering the same questions, pretending they're the age they were that they're teenagers now.
Yeah,
so if you've got a 16-year-old, answer the questions as if you were 16 at that time, and answer them not the way you think would sound best to your teenage, like give them the best lesson. Answer them honestly, and then talk about regrets and appreciation.
Yeah, that's great. If there was one message you intended for readers to take away from your book, what would it be? I guess be patient or wait for the right guy. What exactly?
The thing is that girls everybody is on a continuum of development. You start when you're born and you finish when you die.
Yeah.
And it isn't that you're right or wrong or good or bad. It's just that you are learning. And you have to give yourself the benefit of the doubt when you make a mistake and pick yourself up and move on, because you are a miracle and a magnificent machine.
Yeah.
And you are developing.
Yeah.
And no one else besides you has a clue either.
No, that's for sure. And it's so unfortunate when a mistake in the past, you let that constantly pull you down with regret, and it's so pointless because it doesn't accomplish anything, regretting what you did in the past other than as a lesson to what not to do in the future. But
I'll add this point because it's a little off topic, but I just say that mean people, because this is an issue in school, mean people are mean because they are insecure.
Yeah, that's
if they were secure, they wouldn't be mean.
Well, where do we go to find your book, Our Girl's Guide to Good Guys? Our Girl's Guide to Good Guys. I can't say it for some reason. When it comes out, where will we find it?
You can find it on my website. Of course, it'll be at Amazon and the bookstores.
Yeah.
But right now, you can go to my website at www.deborahanndavis.com/giveaway, because I have a couple of items there for your listeners if they want to go and get them. And one of them is 10 ways to tell if you are ready for sex. That's for your teenage girls.
Yeah.
And another one is 10 prom prep tips for parents, which I know we are beyond prom season, but all these tips apply to graduation parties and summer issues. And then the third one is just for the parents, 10 ways to add movement into your day, because a physical you is a healthier you, and it makes it so much easier for you to dial down your stress by exercising and be able to deal with your teens.
No,
and I just also wanted to add that my name is spelled DeborahAnn Davis.
Yeah, okay, so that's where we'd find that giveaway, and they sound like great, and the price is right on that.
Free.
Well,
just all you got to do is go to the website.
Yeah. Today, both of our guests have emphasized the importance of effectively communicating with our teens, and I know most teens will tell mom and dad that we should bug off, but whatever they say, the truth is they still love their parents. They want and need our love, and deep down they crave our support and approval. And the simple truth, the insecure adolescent brain is constantly searching for its comfort zone, its path to full adult acceptance, happiness, and security. And it's just that your teen is so afraid of embarrassment or humiliation, and the peer pressure is so strong, they're no longer small, and we can't force our will upon our teenagers just because I said so. And as parents who care, we remain involved and interested. We can remain involved and interested. We can pick our moments, understand where our teens are coming from, and co-create with our teens a safe and optimal path to adulthood, respecting them for who they are and where they're coming from, and don't try to mold them into carbon copies of us. That's always a mistake. In return, it's okay to ask for your teens' respect as their parents, and believe me, as they mature into young adults, your teenage daughters and sons will love and respect you for being there and having their back. And thank you, Deborah Ann Davis, for your sage advice. I wish more teenagers could have you as their high school biology teacher.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And best of success with your forthcoming book, A Girl's Guide to Good Guys, and with your 3 teenage novels. And that's our program for today. And now let's all go out and enjoy the summer.